Aloha everyone, gaveling in for our 2 o'clock hearing in room 309 for the Committee on Education on April 14th. We have a long agenda and we're looking forward to getting started. So up first we have SCR 1 SD1 and first to testify is Department of Human Services with comments.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Leah Diaz here for Department of Human Services, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. I'm going to stand on our submitted written testimony with comments, and I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Up next, we have in person, Mr. Gashel with the National Federation of the Blind of Hawaii.
Thank you, Vice Chair Capella. Thank you, members, and pleasure to be here. You know, I won't take long. I could be on a soapbox, but this isn't the time for that. I just want to thank you for holding this hearing. When you're blind, one of the problems is that not everybody believes in you. That's even true at the Department of Education, as this resolution points out, and it'll help us get over that, I think. If we can pass in the legislature this year, the concurrent version of this resolution. So we have the full statement of the legislature in support of blind people teaching other blind people. And I just looked over the testimony that came in from various people across the state, but really impressive.
Yeah, I hope
it was really impressive to hear their eloquent statements. So I'm going to quit and say mahalo for holding this hearing.
Thank you very much for being here and thank you for your testimony. Up next, we have Donald Sakamoto, an individual in support. Okay, not present. We also have Anne Lamecki, another individual in support. Okay, we have Kirby Shaw, Disability and Communications Access Board in support, Stan Young, Hawaii State Committee of Blind Vendors in support, and a number of other individuals, about 10 or 13, all in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Oh.
Sure, this is Donald Sakamoto.
Oh, yes, please testify.
Sorry, I was trying to get on. Yes, thank you, Chair and Vice Chair and other members. Name is Donald Sakamoto in full support of this resolution. As a blind individual who attended Ho'opono Agency for the Blind in 2011, I was able to do sleep shaded all my class requirements through instructors there, teachers who are blind that went through the system. It's wonderful to have people who are blind as qualified educators because it made my experience more easier. Actually, it challenged me to be better in my aspects of being able to be independent and do things. So I urge you to pass this resolution, and we have to prepare for the future. And by preparing, it gives us better aspects for these instructors. So famous quote by Benjamin Franklin, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. So let's prepare and pass this resolution, get qualified teachers to teach other blind children and youth. And that's all I have to say, but thank you for allowing me to speak and submit my written testimony. Aloha.
Absolutely, thank you so much for your testimony. I love that quote. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to SCR 13. We have the Legislative Reference Bureau providing comments. We have Executive Office of Early Learning providing comments, and the Early Learning Board also providing comments, as well as Early Childhood Action Strategy providing comments, and 2 individuals in support. On my list, it says that there's no one here to testify in person. Is there anyone wishing to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, there's no one to ask questions of, so we're gonna move on to the next measure. SCR 34, SD1. Up first, we have Early Learning Board in support. We also have Kamehameha Schools in support, and Early Childhood Action Strategy in support, and the Hawaii Children's Action Network Speaks, providing comments. Also, no one saying that they would be here to testify in person. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this measure? Seeing that there's no one to ask questions of, we're going to be moving on, members. Next measure is SCR 63 SD1, an individual, Micah Galoyu Jr. in support.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair. I'm actually Michael Galoyu Jr. in my official capacity as chair of the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii, testifying in support of this measure. This is a long time coming. The late Congresswoman Patsy Mink did so much, not just for our state, but for women in education across the board, for all minority groups. And this is definitely an honor that she so rightly deserves. So I hope that you will all pass this out and support it as it goes through the process. Mahalo.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you for being here. That was my only in Zoom or in-person testifier. We also have about 3 individuals also in support. Members, are there any questions? No. Okay, seeing none, moving on. SCR 131 SD1. Up first, we have AS Ushijima with the Department of Education providing comments.
Good afternoon, Chair Woodson, Vice Chair Capella, and members of the committee. I'm Terry Ushijima, Interim Assistant Superintendent with the Department of Education, and testifying on behalf of Interim Superintendent Keith Hayashi. We stand on our written testimony and respectfully offer comments on SCR 131 SD1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Up next, Marissa Holligal with the Filipino Curriculum Project in support. Okay, not present. We also have Patricia Halagao with the Tinalak Filipino Education Council in support. Okay, I know I saw Amy Agbayani with the
Aloha.
Hawaii Friends of Civil Rights in support. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for hearing this measure. It's a very important measure, and I stand on our written testimony.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your testimony. We also have, that's all of my Zoom or in-person testifiers. Oh, no, it's not. Okay. We have Caitlin, Jean, Agnes, an individual in support.
Hello. So
Hi.
I'm Caitlin Jane Agnes. I'm a recent graduate from Kapolei High School and one of the members of the Filipino Curriculum Project that I'm here to represent. As a second-generation immigrant from the Philippines, I grew up feeling a disconnection between my family because I couldn't speak their language and I didn't know much about the Philippines history. And for these reasons, I felt lost saying that I'm Filipino American. I know a lot of other people who are afraid to say that they're Filipino American because they share the same struggle as I do, and I don't want future generations of Filipinos in Hawaii to feel the same way. And so supporting this bill will also benefit those who aren't Filipino because the Philippines culture includes vast similarities with other ethnicities like those from the Polynesian Islands. This curriculum will also allow every student who chooses to take this class to embrace their culture and self-identity. And as a group, we already received a lot of support from the DOE by connecting with the education leaders and a lot of other various communities in Hawaii. We hope to gain your support as well, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for being here, Caitlin. Up next, we have Charlene Bumanglan. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your last name. Chair, how do I say this? Yes? Okay, great. Via Zoom. Thank you. Okay, not present. I could have saved myself. Brianna Agas, another individual in support.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Capella, Chair Woodson, and members of the committee. My name is Brianna Kumatagas. I'm a graduate student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I strongly support this resolution as a second-generation Ilocano and Yonsei Gosei Japanese scholar because students like me have always wanted to learn their histories and connect to their roots. Growing up in Hawaii, I had a similar experience as another testifier, Caitlin, and wanting to learn about what it means to be Filipino, but having little to no opportunities to do so. And it really wasn't until college where I was given these opportunities to take ethnic studies classes, recover my lost connections, and live authentically. Again, students such as those in the Filipino Curriculum Project, as aforementioned, have really demonstrated this desire as well. They're taking charge of their learning through submitting testimonies and designing curriculum that speaks to their heritage. I find that it's imperative to listen to our youth, to enact the change that they're asking for, and to ultimately create these spaces for them to thrive. In order for Filipinx youth and overall youth of Hawaii to know where they can go and what they can achieve, they must first learn about the lands of people that they come from. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify, your time and consideration.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for being here. That is all I have on my Zoom and in-person testifiers list. We also have about 13 individuals in support for this measure. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, moving on. SCR 186. We have Department of Transportation, Alan Oshima, providing comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. This is on SCR 168, and I'm testifying on behalf of the SFA Board. Ed Sniffen, our designated administrative lead, cannot be here today, so I am filling in. We have previously submitted testimony on this resolution. In summary, we have been working on rulemaking for months now with borrowed staff from the Department of Transportation, and we do understand the process and taking it out to public hearings at the appropriate time. We are targeting all of that. There are still some rules that we're working on, but upon completion, they'll be reviewed by the board, sent to the governor's office, and then taken out to public hearing as required. And we do want public input on all the rules and regs that we draft and adopt. So that's where we are. And I'll stand on the pre-written testimony, pre-submitted testimony, but I'll be here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for being here. Members, that's all I have on my testifiers list. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I have a question for DOT, well, SFA. If you can speak on behalf of that. Oh, perfect. Do you think SFA will likely be able to meet the deadline for establishing the administrative rules that are proposed by this resolution?
We're well on our way for the general administrative rules. They're being reviewed by our public interest group. We have two board members who have been working with staff on that. It has not been submitted to the full board. A draft of it has been, but the final draft will be submitted to the board for approval, then sent to the governor. The scope of the SFA's work requires probably more rules and regs in terms of reviewing public or private proposals and how we administer projects, et cetera. And those are being worked on as we speak. But yes, our hope is to have that done.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, members, any other questions? Seeing none, moving on to SCR 171. Up first, we have Department of Education providing comments. Mr. Tanaka or Superintendent Hayashi? Not present. Okay, moving on, we have Yvonne Lau with the Charter School Commission.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Capella, Chair Woodson, and members of the committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide comments on this resolution. We really appreciate the recognition of our public charter school students as public school students, but unfortunately, not all of our public charter school students currently enjoy access to the school lunch program under the federal school meal program. Unlike the department, the commission is statutorily unable to represent all public charter schools in the federal school meal program. As each public charter school is its own independent state entity, and due to federal regulations that requires each individual public charter school to be its own independent school food authority, many of the public charter schools simply cannot afford to financially access the program and to meet all of the federal regulatory requirements. Additionally, many public charter schools do not have the facilities to provide meals, nor do the costs of procuring such meals through commercial vendors afford them to provide these meals as well. it would be great if public charter schools could provide meals through the Hawaii Department of Education. And this would actually address many of the equity issues for our public charter school students. However, it's the federal regulations that remain the barrier. This is actually a key issue that I think we'd love to work with this committee, the department, and all our public charter schools on in addressing this ongoing issue. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this testimony.
Thank you very much for your testimony. That's all I have on my testifiers list. Members, are there any questions?
Sure.
Yes, Chair.
Charter School Commission, please.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you for being here. Is there a difference in the amount of reimbursement rate you receive compared to traditional DOE schools? And if so, why is that?
I don't think, and I'm not the authority on the school food service. I think I see AS Tanaka here, but I believe they receive the same reimbursement rates. It's just that, I mean, I think the department will tell you that school food meal program is a losing venture. I mean, the state eats a lot of that. And, you know, I think the department tries really hard to combine, to procure, you know, to make the meals as economically as possible. But charter schools, some of them some of our conversion schools who have facilities are able to make the meals and recover as much of the cost as they can through the program, but many of our charter schools do not. And so a lot of those students end up having to bring their own lunch. Or in some cases, some of the schools actually build the cost of meals that they can procure on their own, and they pay for that. So that is taking away from their per pupil cost that really they would probably prefer to apply to the cost of educating our children, but that is something that some of our charter schools do because they do believe that children should be fed and not be hungry when they go to school. So
was it these schools that are unable to offer meals? What is the reason for that, the specific reason, and what did those schools do?
Well, I'm sure as the department will tell you, there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of requirements. And for charter schools to do that, they're gonna have to hire people that can do that work, that have the capacity to do that work. And on top of that, if they're going to produce the meals themselves, they have to have the facilities. So if they don't have the facilities to do that, then they will try to procure meals from a private vendor. And as you can imagine, the cost of buying meals is very high. So it's not something financially that works for a lot of the schools. And that's probably the biggest reason why a lot of our charter schools do not provide meals.
So those students bring their home lunch, is that?
Yeah, so yes, that's what happens.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know that Ms. Lau mentioned that AS Tanaka is on. I just wanted to give you one more opportunity if you are.
Thank you, Vice Chair Capella, Chair Woodson, for your time this afternoon. We stand by the testimony we've submitted. I think much of what Ms. Lau has mentioned is some of the realities we're dealing with. The vended meal program is essentially our program that supplies meal services to charters and those that wish to use our service for a number of different reasons. You know, one is cost, one is facility management, one is food safety and compliance with the federal regulations. All of those at times can be very onerous. And you're not only talking about producing the meal, but delivering the meals to the schools and making sure that it's delivered safely, meal planning and acquisition of the products. Generally, I will tell you what Ms. Lau said is true. It is a losing money venture, but it's not only about the money. We know that if we provide nutritious meals, a hungry child doesn't learn well. So we need to make those kinds of accommodations as best we can for the benefit of the students and their educations. So we work hard at it. But my team tells me that our, lack of a better term, our catering program, our vended meal program, we it costs us about 1.4 million more than we recover in terms of dollars. But this is not a for-profit venture. This is a social need that we need to accommodate. We're working on an alternate plan. It was brought to my attention about 6 months ago, so we're kind of trying to evaluate that. We think the central kitchen will help us a lot from a volume production and distribution from there. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, A.S. Tanaka. And
Ms. Capella?
yes,
Is there any way to ask for consideration of testimony for the resolution?
quick recess. Continuing back with our 2 o'clock agenda, I know that there are a number of individuals who have come on late to testify for measures that we have already gone past. Unfortunately, because we've already gone through them and we've moved on with the agenda, we have your written testimony if you've submitted written testimony, and the members will be able to consider that. Thank you very much, though. I hope that in the future, every individual will remain timely with our hearings. Continuing on to our next measure, SCR 216. Up first, we have DOE in support.
Good afternoon again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Terry Ushijima here. We stand on our written testimony in support of SCR 216. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, A.S. Ushijima. Up next, we have Lynn Costales Matsuoka with the Sex Abuse Treatment Center in support. Okay, not present. We have a number of organizations as well, Parents and Children Together in support, Hawaii Youth Services Network in support, Executive Office on Early Learning in support, the Early Learning Board providing comments, Kamehameha Schools in support, Hawaii Children's Action Network Speaks providing comments, and Hawaii Community Foundation in support, as well as Early Childhood Action Strategy in support. That's all I have on my Zoom testifiers list. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, are there any questions? The only individual here testifying on this measure is DOE.
To the DOE.
Rep. Ganadin.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Yes.
I had an opportunity to recently view the facilities at the Susanna Wesley Center, which is in the district I have the pleasure of representing. So they're doing much of the statewide work to prevent sex trafficking. Can you explain kind of what, if we were to pass this resolution, kind of what kind of programming would go into DOE schools? Like, so when I visited Susanna Wesley, they shared with us a recent video that they had made in collaboration with other nonprofits to educate students and faculty as to what sex trafficking might look like, what kind of patterns might emerge from young people, those kinds of things. So can you explain how this might be implemented?
Yes, if I can bring up my health specialist as well, but while she comes up, we do have our annual child abuse reporting videos, and that center is a partner in that. And we do include some signs of what to look for in students in order to be more alerted, and what careful steps the staff should take in those situations. But this is Nadine, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. So the three elements that we're looking for in terms of this report is one, we're looking at the curriculum that can occur from pre-K through 12, for example. So we'd be looking at what's currently in place and working with our community partners to think about what else it could include. We currently have a list of instructional materials that are on our recommended list. So we take a look at that as a starting point, perhaps. We'd also be looking at what sort of staff training might be required, as well as what sort of information we can provide to parents. So again, we'll be working closely with our partners to figure out what it could look like, look at what's in place, and then how we could improve.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have a question for you folks as well. Thank you for being here. I think my question is, if this reso were to move forward, would any of the Aaron's Law trainings include anything specific to gender identity or sexual orientation?
I'm not sure if we're able to answer that just at this point. I think we'd like to have those meetings, find out what's currently in place, and take a look at perhaps different Aaron's laws in other states and see what we might do in Hawaii.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you both. Okay, moving on to SCR 217 SD1. We have the Executive Office of Early Learning and Support, the Early Learning Board providing comments, Kamehameha Schools in support, the Hawaii Children's Action Network Speaks, providing comments, the Hawaii Community Foundation in support, and Early Childhood Action Strategies in support. No one has indicated that they will be testifying in person or via Zoom. So members, seeing that there's no one to ask questions to, we're going to move on to our final measure, which is SCR 226. Up first, we have AS Ushijima DOE providing comments.
Thank you again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Terry Ushijima. We stand on our written testimony and respectfully offer comments on SCR 226. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for being here. And then we also have one other individual in support with the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission, not testifying in person, written comments only. Members, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none.
There isn't a chance to testify live online for that?
For SCR 226?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Dear Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Dear Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, my name is Tristan Shong, and I testify in strong support of the measure on behalf of my organization, CARES. We provide educational experiences to the community in Kalihi. Studying civil rights should be a necessary subject to explore at school. It is important for students to learn about the nonviolent resistance movement championed by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It is vital to the foundation of our students' academic studies to learn about what our nation is built upon: truth, democracy, liberty, and justice. It is critical that our students learn about what is true, what is noble, what is right, and what is just by studying history, by studying the mistakes that were made in history and the history that has been made to rectify the wrongs. I have a dream the children and the keikis of our future will be survivors and champions in the face of discrimination, hate crimes, and abuse. I have a dream that the kids will learn about social justice and how to care about each other deeply, and not just to learn to make policies and exercise rules. They say they want to they say they want to tell the world about their culture, and yet they live like surgery took place with no sutures, bleeding out generations of trauma, seeing now the truth of their drama, generations of hate bred in captivity. They live like their days are numbered with no recognition of eternity, generations of unforgiveness and animosity. They speak like they're still oppressed by slavery. They don't know the one true God who has forgiven humanity. We say we want to spread the word of Christianity, and so we live like every day is an operation of social justice and equality, inspiring generations of healing, touched by the authenticity of believing, generations of freedom led to creativity. We live like our days are meant to be written in history, generations of forgiveness and kindness. We speak like our dreams were destined for greatness. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Okay, Members, are there any other questions?
Is the DOE here?
Yes.
Okay.
Rep. Ganadin?
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Yes.
In reading this very short resolution, I don't see a conversation about some of the issues that are sort of specific to Hawaii. So there's no discussion of, let's say, like the Hawaiian Renaissance, various indigenous rights movements, movements for peace in the Pacific, issues regarding immigration, indigeneity, the kinds of things that are really common in civil rights curriculum, like at the college level, in ethnic studies, American studies, Pacific, Hawaiian studies. I could go on and on. So were this to move forward, would you incorporate those kind of Hawaii specific necessary conversations to talk about civil rights? Or are we going to kind of just create what's happening in the continent?
So currently we have opportunities and we do address these areas. So if I could ask our specialist, Rosanna, to come up to address maybe that specific question about how we incorporate those issues closer to Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, and thank you for your question. So actually, I'm pretty proud of the civil rights curriculum. I'm using that in a large term that we have in the Department in Social Studies from K-12. Specific things that you talked about, for example, immigration, whether it's here, speaking of Hawaii, whether it's our nation's immigration, we're talking about world immigration. Specifically, you mentioned the Hawaiian Renaissance. Absolutely. We get into those in very deep detail, actually, through our standards, but they are through different courses. The specifics in this resolution actually named what we would consider like the African-American or Black civil rights movement. But we definitely are talking about the larger issues of civil rights, whether it's women, whether it's Indigenous peoples, very closely through our other courses that are required for all students in the Department of Education.
Thanks so much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we're going to recess for decision making. Okay, gaveling back in for our 2 o'clock agenda for the Committee on Education. Up first, we have SCR 1, SD 1. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass with tech amendments. Members, are there any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, for voting on SCR 1, SD 1, Chair's recommendations to pass with amendments, noting this Chair and Vice Chair for aye. Majority Leader Balani, excused. Representative Clark.
Aye.
Representative Castillas.
Aye.
Representative Ganadin.
Aye.
Representative Gates, excused. Representative Hashimoto, excused. Representative Ono.
Aye.
Representative Quinlan, excused. Representative Takayama.
Aye.
Representative Yamane, excused. Representative Okimoto. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Moving on to SCR 13, Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass with technical amendments. Members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on SCR 13, the Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, non-excused absences of Representatives Bellotti, Gates, Hashimoto, Quinlan, Yamane, Okimoto, noting the presence of Hashimoto. Members, are there any reservations or no's? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to SCR 34 SD1, Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass with technical amendments. Members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Thank you, members voting on SCR 34 SD1. Noting the excused absences of Representatives Bellotti, Gates, Quinlan, Yamane, and Okimoto. Members, are there any noes or reservations? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to SCR 63 SD1, Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. We'll be adding the Chair of the Board of Education to the list of entities receiving certified copies of this resolution and technical amendments. Members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Thank you, members voting on SCR 63 SD1. Noting the excused absences of Bellotti, Gates, Quinlan, Yamane, and Okimoto. Members, are there any reservations or noes? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to SCR 131 SD1, Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass with tech amendments. Members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on SCR 131 SD1, noting the excused absences of Representatives Bellotti, Gates, Quinlan, and Yamane, and Okimoto. Are there any reservations or no, members? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to SCR 168, Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments on page 1, lines 27 through 30. We will ask the School Facilities Authority, rather than the governor, to submit a report regarding its process on purchasing real property and executing capital improvement project contracts. We're also going to be adding technical amendments. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Thank you. Members voting on SCR 168, the Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Bellotti, Gates, Quinlan, Yamane, and Okimoto. Any reservations or no? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you very much, Chair. Moving on to SCR 171, Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass with tech amendments. Members, any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Thank you, members voting on SCR 171. The Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absences of Bellotti, Representatives Bellotti, Gates, Quinlan, Yamane, and Okimoto. Are there any reservations or no? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you very much. Moving on to SCR 216. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments on page 1, lines 22 through 30. We will be changing the word requirements to provisions because Aaron's Law has not been enacted in Hawaii, so the DOE cannot be required to implement it. Also, technical amendments will be added. Members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Thank you. Voting on SCR 216, the recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Bellotti, Gates, Quinlan, Yamane, and Okimoto. Members, are there any reservations or noes? Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, Chair. Moving on to SCR 217 SD1, Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass with technical amendments. Members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Thank you. Voting on SCR 217 SD1, the recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Bellotti, Gates, Quinlan, Yamane, and Okimoto. Members, are there any reservations or no? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you very much, Chair. Moving on to our final measure, SCR 226. Vice Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. We will be amending the title of this resolution to read, requesting the Department of Education to develop and implement a civil rights curriculum for public school students to more accurately reflect what the resolution is asking the DOE to do. Members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on SCR 226, the recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Bellotti, Gates, Quinlan, Yamane, and Okimoto. Members, are there any reservations or noes? Recommendation adopted, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. We're adjourned.